Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Today we'll be taking a look at the new wave of updates added for patch 9.1. It does seem that Blizzard is continuing to roll out updates for patch 9.1 and they do not have a candidate release build just yet. I was kind of hoping that this week would slow down with updates, but looks like while they are not massive, they are continuing to iterate on things. Particularly, most of this update is going to be based on the class changes, small ones, but also the legendary updates that could potentially be exciting in the future. So let's take a look at all the updates available in this patch update for classes for patch 9.1. Starting off with the Survival Hunter, the kill command ability is going to do slightly more damage. A very small buff, but it is another buff added towards helping Survival Hunters do slightly more single target output. This buff is also should be added together to some of the other buffs that Survival Hunters have gotten for pure single target damage, buffs towards their Raptor Strike, or Mongoose Bite if you end up playing that instead as a talent, as well as a variety of other single target focused abilities. So hopefully together with this buff included, it does culminate as for maybe a little bit more single target damage, which Survival Hunter definitely lacks. We saw a bit of a rebalancing to the Soul Strike ability for Demonology Warlock, and it also does seem that Blizzard did add another conduit for Warlocks in particular. This is Adaptive Armor Fragments, which at first we speculated was a tank-specific conduit, because tanks are getting constantly healed by a healer, so increasing their stat makes sense. But it looks like this one is attached towards Warlocks. I'm still yet to even see this conduit itself or test it for myself, so that's not a confirmation, but it is interesting to note that it was added for Warlocks in particular. We got some changes to the Shaman legendaries that made the Kyrian legendary a lot easier to play with, and I've actually been playing with that one quite a bit. It's actually so fun, and this change might potentially make it really good on capped area Lego. As someone who plays Kyrian Shaman, and there's not a lot of us out there, I'm really hoping. And there's also slight tuning for the Night Phase Shaman legendary as well. Maybe that'll become a decent legendary down the line. Then we got a small update for Druids. You have the Ursine Adept specialization ability for your Guardian Druid. The passive will only give you 10% damage reduction while inside of bear form. Most of you guys that sit in bear form to tank bosses won't really notice any differences, but those of you that do like to shift out of forms, maybe at the beginning of a Mythic Plus boss pull, you want to pop in the Boomy form, Heart of the Wild, Big Convoke, throw a bunch of Star Surges out to do a boatload of damage. But I think that playstyle is what Blizzard is trying to maybe hit on. It's really difficult to tell what they're trying to do with this nerf. You also got a PvP change for Druids, and since Guardian is a very popular spec for PvP, the growth protection on a talent has gotten buffed. It now has an instant cast time, so you can just plop it down on the ground anywhere you need to immediately, and will have a slightly longer duration, so it ends up being another better utility to use for your allies in order to help them deal with the incoming damage. So I imagine this is going to make Guardian Druid even more appealing going into RBGs in the next patch. When it comes to Priests, we didn't get anything for PvE except for a small change to one of the legendaries. Mostly for Discipline Priest, the Necro legendary will only heal instead of just doing damage. For Shadow Priest, the PvP talent of Void Volley is getting a change. It does slightly less damage, however, every enemy that it hits with that new Shadow Crash will cause them to flee in horror. Horror being a CC effect that might as well be like a stun, it doesn't break to damage. So being able to mass horror multiple enemies or just one with a little bit of RNG involved could be potentially really good for priests going forward. There were some weird buffs or quote-unquote buffs that were added for paladins for both protection and ret. It did at first look like Retribution is getting more judgment damage whenever they Divine Toll, but that just is a tooltip that just wasn't there, but the effect itself was. So now it just tooltip matches the ability and how it functions. And also we have the Paladin change for protection, also just a tooltip change. They're not buffing them, they're just simply making the tooltip easier to read and making the actual passive effect more active. Although I have heard reports about protection Paladins somehow seeing less armor on the PTR, that definitely needs to be addressed in the future. Not a class-specific change, but it does look like the PvP trinket for Gladiator's Emblem, the trinket that increases your health for a limited amount of time, usually uses a defensive trinket with some funny interactions with certain classes. This one has been nerfed a bit. I first thought maybe this is a nerf for PvP, and it does make sense because Blizzard did say that they want to make the game feel deadly, and if anything, they would rather enforce and want players to be encouraged to want to use offensive trinkets rather than defensive trinkets. So this one makes sense, but if you are a Demonology Warlock in particular, and you've been using this trinket to enhance your stamina so that your main Tyrant pet would also be kind of scaled off of your health because he has a weird health scaling to it. That is actually going to impact Demonology Warlocks just a little bit. However, it is a weird, interesting change, and I wonder what other PvP updates we'll see in future builds. While not a class directly change, but this is going to affect every single hunter that isn't survival, and 5 of you survival hunters will not be able to play this. However, the change to the legendary bow added in patch 9.1 does seem to allow this bow to be upgradable. So if you're someone who doesn't venture into the game from heroic standpoint or even mythic standpoint, you will still have a chance in order to somehow potentially upgrade this bow at a higher item level. The Sylvanas bow will be droppable on Raid Finder, normal, heroic, as well as mythic by the looks of it. And they also dug up 2 items that can be used to further upgrade the item level of this legendary bow. This means for players that are trying to get this legendary and haven't been lucky and feel like it'll be part of their integral gameplay when it comes to the high-end content, can go for lower-end content. If you've done your heroic clear and the bow hasn't dropped, you can attempt it at a normal or Raid Finder in order to try to see if you can secure that bow. And then potentially we are implying that you'll probably be able to use the items in order to upgrade it, so more chances for players that are high end to loot it. We do wonder exactly how you get these items, and one of the suggestions is most likely they'll drop from Sylvanas. For example, if you already have the Raid Finder or normal version of that bow and you attack in Sylvanas, and if, let's say, the game were to drop you the bow again, you're not going to get a second version of that bow. Instead, it'll just give you the item to upgrade your currently active bow. However, if you do get these items to upgrade the bow outside of defeating Sylvanas on heroic or mythic, then potentially you could be a player that doesn't really venture into high-end content and still has a decent item level for that bow. So we'll see what that turns out and see how that plays out once it is available for testing for patch 9.1. I think it's fair to say that a lot of us were expecting potentially the 29th release of this month leak to come true, but it looks like with this build, Blizzard has even more updates on the horizon. We are still continuing to get updates. They have slowed down in terms of the intensity and the amount of things going to change in terms of like massive swings, in terms of big buffs and big nerfs and massive alterations, but Blizzard is still continuing to push them out regularly. So it's still right now really difficult to tell exactly when patch 9.1 coming out. But based on the amount of update that's going on, especially some of the Mythic Plus updates that have been happening recently, it looks like there's still quite a bit of work to be done on patch 9.1, although the patch is looking so far really good. There's a lot of content to do, and I'm sure you're like me, we all cannot wait to get this content in our hands as soon as possible. So hopefully we'll hear some good news maybe tomorrow, maybe next week from Blizzard at some point or another. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know what you think about all the updates we had today. Let me know your thoughts about everything we talked about in the comments below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.